Hello everybody, welcome back to Catch Up Court. I go by the name of Hines, your friendly neighborhood catch up man. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of the Catch Up Court podcast. We are recapping all this trial. We have been doing that from day one. We are recapping the Christopher Wolfenbarger trial, and I thought the case was going to end today because the state did rest, but it seems like the defense are going to put up their own defense, and they have presented witnesses today testifying in defense of Christopher Wolfenbarger. So we have, I'm not gonna front it all. It wasn't a fireworks day. Things seem to be going smoothly. We are gonna go through the we are gonna go through the witnesses, as well as going through a bit of the arguments to kind of let you know what has transpired in court today, basically. But before we do that, I just want to say, if you haven't yet, hit that like button. It really does help us out with the YouTube algorithm. Don't forget to share this stream with everyone that you know, so that it can once again take us out of the algorithm. Let that monster stop eating us, and it would really help us out with the visibility of the stream. Right. So before I go into today's witnesses and discuss them in depth, I just want to go through the recap of the whole case so far, from day 1 to day 5, because we are currently on day 6. So day 1, this was where a lot of the technical witnesses was presented. We heard from George McDurmon, who was the person who was the neighbor that found the head at Avon Avenue. And then he was the one to call 911 to report the head missing. This was on April 1999, April 29th to be exact. Then we heard from Dale Kelly, who was the police officer that was responding to the call. There was a lot of fiasco with him. He was basically testifying that he had missing files from his reports. He had missing files, documents. He even said that there was a missing VHS tape. So there was a lot of madness that came out on his testimony. But yeah, he gave testimony in regards to what was going on the scene in April 1999. Then we heard from Tina Miller, who was also she specialized more in missing persons, but she was there because she does more of those cases where you can't identify the victim, and you pretty much need specialization in that area. So that was the bulk of her testimony. I believe she testified that she's a medical examiner now. Then we heard from Tina Mae Patton, who is the sister of Melissa. She testified to the instances of domestic violence that Melissa may have been suffering in the hands of Christopher. Her cross-examination was wild, in my opinion. It really shows the inconsistency of her memories in regards to all of this, because contemporaneously she was reporting something different to law enforcement. But like I said on day 1, the prosecution hasn't had an uphill case to really fight, because of the fact that this is 26 years ago, and the fact that things have changed so much, the fact that technology, as DNA degrades over time, so many things are against them. And yet I felt like from day 1 they didn't really put on a really strong case to even help the jury. They didn't even, especially on day 2, I should say, they didn't even give time and dates to all of this incident. It wasn't very clear because they didn't present a cohesive timeline to the witness testimonies. Anyway, on day 2, we heard from Ronald Brock and Cynthia Brock, who was Chris Wolfenbarger former employers. They just basically testified that a saw was missing, and Chris was essentially fired I believe it was sometime in February 2000 and, no, sorry, not 2000, 1999, February 1999. Then we heard from Dorothy Cooley, who was the neighbor that that alleged that she heard domestic violence, that she saw domestic violence injuries on Melissa. She saw injuries after a supposed domestic violence incident. This was supposed to be around the 21st of June 2020. No, not 2000. Sorry, 21st of June 1998. This was supposed to be around that time, and they had a protective order meeting the next day. So she was giving testimony to that. The cross-examination was brutal. Her rap sheet was brought up. You know, she had so many convictions that year that the other instances where she said that she heard commotions, that she heard screaming, etc., then was basically part of that. Essentially, there were so many times that she was in jail and convicted, and that it gave a negative influence on her testimony and the reliability of her personal knowledge of these things. She also testified that when she was inspecting Christopher Barger's place when he had already moved out in February 1999, so she only saw male clothes there. There was no female clothes. So at that time, he had already moved out of the neighborhood. Then we heard from Marlon Sutton, who was the DV officer that responded to an incident. We actually don't know the time and date of this incident. So a lot was left to be desired because its reports didn't give enough information. Then we heard from Detective Stephen O'Hare, who was the arresting officer of Christopher Wolfenbarger. He was arrested on the 6th of August 2024. He was seen on the body cam hiding behind some appliances. Then we heard from Norma Patton, who was Melissa's mother, also the wife of Carl Patton, the serial killer for the Flint River murders. So the cross-examination for this testimony was brutal, but the direct examination, she just basically gave a rundown of when Chris and Melissa got married. She gave a rundown on the upbringing of Melissa. She also detailed when she was in jail, all of those things. Her testimony continued on to day 3, where we got to hear that cross-examination, where we got to hear a molestation event that occurred around the 90s with Eric Martin Jackson, where he found out that Carl Patton was actually behind the Flint River murders, and one of Eric's family members was killed by him. So he was hanging around the Pattons and really good friends with them. So I thought that this cross-examination was largely, and I mean really, in favor of the defense, simply because it just helps their third-party culprit. They are arguing it, and a lot of their defense today has been around that third-party corporate argument. They have been soliciting testimony in regards to the home life of the Pattons to give that idea that they could have been responsible for this crime, or anyone around that family could have been responsible for that crime. So I believe that Norma Patton's testimony was largely in favor of the defense. Then we heard testimony from Thomas Dixon, who was Melissa's lover. He was having an affair. When it started, when it ended, we have no idea. We are left to assume it was either in 1997 or 1998. We don't know. But nonetheless, they had an affair. I personally thought he was probably the most sanest one, and then it turned out to be a convicted felon. So that was in 2010. He robbed a bank. So that was the bulk of his testimony. And he also forgot to mention, he also testified to have seen marks, scratches, and bruises on Melissa. and also Melissa had told him some instances of DV with Christopher, which he told to the detectives when they were going through this case. Then we heard testimony from Christina Garrett, who was basically testifying to not being much pictures around of Melissa at the home. She's the daughter of Christopher Wolfenbarger. She just basically gave testimony on how she sent pictures to Norma Patton when she learned more about who her mother is. She also gave testimony in regards to Christopher saying something about his license, the address being different. We talked about that. You can watch most of our recaps if you really want a more in-depth discussion about these witnesses. The link is in the description. Anyway, moving on. Then we heard from Jarion Shepard, who was the homicide investigator this time around. So not back in 1999, but taking the case on from 2021. We went through his Krause's examination yesterday, and also his direct examination on day 4 at length. And personally, I wasn't impressed, but yeah, a lot came out of his testimony in regards to Chris and his whereabouts when he last saw Melissa, etc. I forgot to mention. Let me just mention it now because I missed out the name. I believe it was Alton B. Calhoun on day 3. That was the investigator back in 2003 before this case became a cold case. So I forgot to mention him before moving on to the witnesses in day 4. So like I mentioned, the day 4 witnesses, Jarion Shepard. I also missed out Pete Ricketts. He was the first witness up on day 4. Pete Ricketts was the missing persons, who he works for the missing persons with the law enforcement, with the Department of Crimes against children, women, and missing persons. And he was the one to respond to the missing persons report that was made by the Pattons. And he went and interviewed them and interviewed other witnesses with Calhoun. Then we heard from Leanne Elizabeth Lacoste. She was the one that was giving the new information to the investigators, to relevant investigators, and she also testified to what was happening with the cadaver dogs back in 1999. We heard from Dr. Hupti, who was going through how she identified Melissa on her interview, on her testimony, I should say. When she was giving testimony, she showed an error that was made on the dental records, where Melissa was registered as 1970. So she was actually born on the 9th of September 1977, but on the dental records it's actually registered as 1970. So that mistake was glaring on her screen. Then we heard from Dr. Mark Gilbo, who was the anthropologist. His testimony was equally as embarrassing because the misidentification, he basically revealed on Krause's examination that the misidentification could have been due to one of his colleagues who came in and identified another skull previously, and then he came in to basically misidentify Melissa to be a male rather than a female, which obviously this misidentification delayed things until 2003 when she was properly identified. Then we heard on day 5, we heard from Michael Sprinkle, who was the deputy DA. Nothing much offered except for playing an inaudible audio that I cannot even give you the cliff notes of what is said. So we went through that on day 5. That there was nothing much. That was yesterday. We went through Rosa James, who was an IPV expert. She was only giving expert testimony. Nothing really to do with the case, just about DV and how the cycle of abuse works. Then we heard from Dr. Carol Terry, who was the medical examiner back in 1999 when this case began. So she was working with, I believe his name is Dr. Kevin Andrews or something along the Kevin Parker, I believe his name is. But anyway, she was working with her, and the other doctor was the one that was examining the autopsy. So she still was around, and she was able to opine in regards to the injuries and the decomposition of the autopsy, the fractures. I believe she mentioned skull fractures, but the most important part that came out of her testimony was the fact that she had missing x-rays. So there was no x-rays to be found. So she can't go into detail what those fractures could mean, whether it was hit by a hammer, whether it was done by a mechanism. She couldn't go into it. So that really was a massive blunder for the state, and I'm wondering how they even brought the case with all of these defects, like so many things that have handicapped the case, that you, especially now that they're arguing for a directed verdict on the felony murder, which does need a weapon. It does need an underlying charge of an aggravated assault, from my understanding. So a weapon would be necessary to actually show that a felony that felony murder had occurred. The prosecution cannot put this up because of this missing x-ray. That's what I believe, because if they had the x-ray in, they could 100% have been able to opine and let the jury infer what could have caused it. Like, so they could have presented some sort of mechanism that could have caused those fractures, but they don't have it. So it's a mess of a case. I've said that from the beginning. I'm wondering how the prosecution were hoping to get a guilty verdict in this case, where they can't even meet the lesser included charge of felony murder. They can't even put that together. And I will say it, Chris may have done this in some universe. Let's say that Chris may have done this. This isn't a case of he done it so brilliantly, because it was argued today on the directed verdicts. He done it so brilliantly that he can't be traced. That's not even the case. There are so many flaws in the investigation leading, like, that you can't say that he's a brilliant murderer. Well, for one, he left the body at its workplace. That's not brilliant. Like, and we still, no one knows, and I understand that time of death is not important, but no one still knows when exactly this murder occurred. Did it occur before the battery hearing that she had on the 15th, or after that? Because based on what Alton Calhoun, based on what he said in his interview with Chris, apparently Chris has said that him and Melissa went for a Taco Bell and she boarded a train. We don't know whether this was on earlier in March or after March, but Calhoun was so sure that he is lying because she was already found dead in April. So again, like, my mind blows for this case. My mind really does blow. So anyway, today's witnesses, let's go into that. Kimberley Cameron, the sister of Christopher Wolfenbarger, was the first witness. Then we heard from Cathy Wolfenbarger, who is Christopher's mom, and we heard from Joseph Wolfenbarger, who is Christopher's son. The one thing that the defense, before I go into more detail, the defense are waiting on a witness to come. So that's another update. They have, I believe, their motion for a continuance has been accepted. So we might not even have court tomorrow. It might be on Monday. I don't believe the judge. I believe the judge has given him a bit of time to update her ahead of time or something like that. But for now, I believe it's happening on Monday to get the witness in. But she could be in tomorrow. But apparently this witness is going to testify into the home environment of the Pattons, and it's useful for their case because they're trying to show, they're trying to bolster their third-party corporate argument. And this particular witness was really close with Melissa, apparently, but she doesn't want to testify for Christopher. She just wants to tell the truth, but she doesn't want to testify for Christopher in his defense. So that's the difficulty. So she is apparently coming in as an adverse witness, and it's weird. Like, why doesn't this girl want to testify for Christopher? Like, what has he done? And I do believe if something is there for this witness, if something is there for the prosecution, they should welcome this witness. They should, in my opinion, try to probe a bit more into the relationship that she may know from in regards to with Christopher and Melissa. I believe that they are gonna do that if the direct examination opens that door. But like, just me trying to wrap my head around this case, if she did not see some kind of violence happening with these two closer to the day of death, it's of no use to the prosecution. It's of no use at all. So the prosecution intends to rebut the defense case in chief. So there we shall see. They still haven't tied him to the crime at all. They still haven't tied him to the crime. But anyway, let's go into the first witness of the day, and that was Kimberley Cameron, and she gave testimony into spending quite a lot of time with Melissa when she had lived with the Wolfenbargers, and she said that she had calmed her down while she was driving or something like that, or a testimony like that. That's how close they were. She testified also that Melissa's parents didn't want her to have children, which of course jives with Norma's testimony that she didn't want Christopher and Melissa being together or having a relationship. We also heard testimony in regards to the birth control pills being given or forcefully given to Melissa by Norma. So, I mean, that testimony alone is just showing third party corporate right there. Like, maybe you might think, well, how does that rise to the level that it will want to murder the child? The truth is, it doesn't have to. The idea is they have enough to hate that child that is possible. They could have wanted her dead. The defense doesn't have to prove anything. But I believe that third party corporate theory is more persuasive than what the prosecution has put forward so far. But that's my opinion. Moving on, she testified that that she spent Christmases and the holidays, all of those things with Melissa, and she said that she does not remember Melissa calling her mother, Norma Patton, or writing to her parents at that time. So something interesting happened on cross-examination where the state were highlighting why the parents did not want Melissa to have children. They were talking around that part of her testimony. They were cross-examining around that part of her testimony, and they presented a letter. This is the first time I've seen that letter be presented, because I know I don't believe this is the same letter that she read out where she received. I don't believe so. It sounded different, but I don't believe it's the same letter that she read when Norma was on the stand, where she was saying that she didn't want to do or give the. It sounded like she didn't want to give the child over to the Pattons, but that letter was read, and here, hold up, let me try and get it up. Sorry, let me try and get it up here for you guys. Okay, my screen froze for a minute, but yeah, so this was a letter.
Can you, I'm not sure what that one says, please.
Does it say you can pass them out?
Yes, sorry, you can pass them out if you wish, but it won't for the fact.
But if it wasn't for the fact that Cathy was there when I got them, she would not have gotten any.
She would not have gotten any of them. She wanted me to give Chris's grandmother the biggest one, but I didn't, and she got mad at me, but oh well. They are both getting on my nerves. They act as if Chrissy is their daughter and not mine. And there is something that I need to tell you, and I really don't know how. So I will tell you like this.
Again, if I'm wrong at all in anything that I'm presenting, feel free to let me know in the chat. But like I said, I don't remember this letter being read. Maybe my memory is failing me, but I don't remember this letter being read. There's no time frame for this letter. It's just been presented. So I'm guessing hard. If this is a new letter, it's probably I'm overloading.
Do you want me to continue?
Yes, please.
You will sooner than you think have another grandchild. July 27th is the due date. Do not be mad because you are not the only one just finding out. Please. Not sure.
Does it please don't rub it in, mentioning something like you know how hard it is to take care of two kids so close in age, like Kimberley and JC?
A few days.
Is that
Okay, so the volume cut out for a bit. Let me try and move it up. The stream was extremely bad today. If I'm being honest, it cut out at some point. We are gonna get to it, but anyway, moving on.
About you would be mad. So did I told Chris, and Chris got mad. When Cathy asked to take Chrissy off, Chris said no, she better be here when I get back. And Cathy got mad, and I laughed. You probably think this is stupid, but if you had someone trying to be mother to your daughter, you would get mad too. And when we do move, they are not going to know where we are living. Every time they go off, they have to take Chrissy and don't even ask.
Okay, so that was I appreciate that, Lexi. So Lexi, as said, it was mentioned. So I do remember the letters being read by Norma, but it wasn't read in its entirety. So the entirety came in from her testimony. I'm guessing that it was because of the direct exam that's how the entirety was actually allowed to be read. So I'm okay. It just hit me. Okay, it just hit me because it would still be hearsay. But on redirect exam, there was something that that Joe McDurmon did that kind of puts it all into context now why some of these things were not objected to, because it would be hearsay. But anyway, so she continues to read the letters. That was the letter read. She also, the cards and letters were also shown to her that Melissa had written to the family. And to be quite fair, when I saw this, I thought that the witness was a bit timid. I thought that maybe she will come across as if she is, I wouldn't say lying, but just being coerced to be on the stand, that she wasn't fully confident to be on the stand. And her voice was even cracking a bit, that I thought she crying. That's what I thought when she was going through the testimony. But the part that I do want to highlight is another failing from the prosecution that, well, I thought was a failing anyway.
Yeah.
And this was in regards to when the prosecution was asking important questions in regards to the temporary restraining order. The temporary guardianship, sorry.
No, you don't remember? No, it didn't happen.
No, I don't remember.
Her ever telling you that she loves your brother, but she wanted to leave him?
No.
Hold up.
No, or you don't remember?
No.
No, or you don't remember?
No, I don't remember.
Okay. Do you know if she talked to you about the fact that your brother, was upset because she went to the male neighbor's house who was up the street?
No.
No, or you don't remember?
No, I never had that conversation.
Okay. Do you recall her ever telling you that she loves your brother, but she wanted to leave him?
No.
No, you don't remember? No, it didn't happen.
No, I don't remember.
Do you remember detectives back in around 2003 coming to meet with you regarding Melissa's disappearance?
Yes.
And do you remember it being a Detective Calhoun?
I don't remember who it was.
Do you remember talking to him about your friendship with Melissa?
I don't remember exactly, no.
I'm sorry, say that last part again.
No, I don't remember.
Okay. And I apologize. Do you remember talking on the phone with any detectives back in 2003?
No, I don't remember talking on the phone.
Did you tell that detective that Melissa wrote you a letter?
No, I've never said she's written me a letter.
So is it your testimony today that you never told a detective that Melissa wrote you a letter prior to her disappearance?
It is my testimony that she did not write me a letter.
Okay. And that you never told a detective?
I never told a detective that she wrote me a letter.
Okay. And that in the letter or either in the conversation, again, Melissa told you she loved your brother, but she was getting ready to leave him.
She's never told me that.
This is night and day lawyering, because we've seen cross-examination from Tina in regards to Tina May and Norma Patton. I believe more so Tina May on day one. I remember Joe McDurmon when he was asking questions in regards to when Tina May had said that Melissa was not upfront in giving the information, in saying that Christopher was abusing her outright, that she wasn't upfront in telling her this. She gave that testimony in court, but when Joel gone on cross-examination, he just asked her, did you say this to the detective back in 1999, back in 2000 or one of those time frames? And she essentially said, I don't remember, or I never said. I think she said one of the two. And what Joel did was basically go and give her the transcript, jog that memory. Go and give her the transcript, and then she says, oh yeah, that did happen. I did say that. And he done that with almost every witness that just couldn't remember in regards to speaking with law enforcement officials. But for some reason, we have Hilton here giving testimony, asking questions in regards to her being questioned by Detective Calhoun about having this letter, or her telling Detective Calhoun that Melissa was writing her letters, and she's denying it. So why don't you just present the transcripts and jog a memory or impeach her and say, but you said this at that time? She just completely leaves it alone. Makes you wonder, do you have the has that ever happened? Why I think that this is a bad move for the prosecution is that the jury is likely going to look at it and not look at them as credible. Because end of the day, it's just, I just think that this is just the worst attempt of impeachment. But anyway, moving on. The state also highlights that she gave Carol a temporary guardianship. I don't know where this was going in regards to this temporary guardianship or permanent guardianship, because what ended up happening is that on the 29th, I believe on the 29th, based on Norma's testimony, the guardianship became permanent anyway. So I don't know what Hilton was trying to achieve here by bringing up the temporary guardianship and the fact that it was dissolved on July 23rd. The temporary guardianship was dissolved on July 23rd, when we already know that the Wolfenbargers had a permanent custody. So that was weird for me to see Hilton go in around that. Hilton also asked her if she had heard the podcast, and she basically said no, she has not heard any podcast in regards to this case. So that was the bulk of the cross-examination. On redirect, the defense were highlighting the time frame of the letter based on its content, and was asking her if this would have been around the time of April 1996, and she agreed that the letter would have been written or given around the time of April 1996. So that is something that I don't think we had in when Norma was reading this. I was reading that letter. I don't think a time frame was given. But it's really key because it goes in line with when Norma received the temporary custody of the children, because that temporary custody was made on the 20th of June 1996. So that's what she gave testimony to today. Then we heard the direct examination of Cathy Wolfenbarger, and I'll be very, very honest. Cathy was not really helpful in any way at all. This was when the stream cut off. So on redirect examination, her stream had cut off. So I didn't get any, there was nothing to be understood from the redirect or the recross. But she wasn't much help. She could not remember much. So there was nothing that was notable from her testimony. So the best I could gather from Cathy's testimony was that she testified that Melissa had given her custody because she did not want them to be with the Pattons. She says that that the temporary custody was later made permanent. On cross-examination, she testified that Chrissy, being one, she testified to Chrissy or Christina. That is, we heard testimony from her back when the state was giving their case. She was 1 year old when she began living with the grandparents. She testified that Melissa did not want to dissolve the temporary custody order, and the state just didn't follow up on this. So I don't know why they didn't follow up on this. Like you're trying to argue that Melissa did want to dissolve the dissolve the temporary custody order because of possible problems with Chris. But she's saying here, no, she did not want to dissolve the temporary custody order. You could probe more, a little bit more, and ask, were they having trouble at this point? Okay, what type of trouble? Were they arguing a lot? Did you see Chris do this? This is just trying to show that, like, you brought in a DV expert to try and show what would happen in a cycle of abuse. And when you have witnesses like this, especially with the mother who is likely going to be with them, these were teenagers at the time. They moved the child, like, they had custody. The mother had custody, not Chris. And the child was also living with the grandparents. So she would likely see the relationship dynamic. And you have a witness here that can possibly give you, even if she was feigning, I'm not going to say feigning, sorry, that's a bad choice of words. Even if she couldn't remember much, you could still probe and be like, did you see any type of dynamics like this? Did you hear arguments? Did you do all those things? I get it. It's risky. It's risky for them because they don't want to have the jury think, oh no, they were actually having a good dynamic at home. But you knew that this witness was coming in. I'm pretty sure you would ask that question before she gets onto the stand. So I was really surprised why she didn't want to probe more into this area, especially where the bulk of cross-examination was around this temporary custody issue with the sister of Christopher Wolfenbarger. So that part left me a bit flabbergasted why she didn't want to do that. Why Hilton did not want to follow up in regards to her not wanting to dissolve the temporary custody, but it ended up being dissolved anyway. So you gotta ask the question: did it expire, or did Melissa do it just to turn it to a permanent custody? Anyway, she being Cathy Wolfenbarger, I gave testimony also that Melissa had left and they just didn't know where she was. So that was also a bit of interesting testimony to come out on cross-examination because they were just adamant that she just left one day. So I don't know what was happening in redirect, because when the feed came back on, they were asking about injuries and showing photographs about where these injuries were here, but I don't know what that was, because are they talking about previous instances of abuse? Did they bring up instances of abuse during cross-examination? I don't know. So I can't say much in regards to that. But when the feed did come back on, there was that, and then the state rested. So, but anyway, on cross-examination, she testified that she never placed a call to report that Melissa was missing, and was sure that Chris perhaps had reported her missing. So she was like, I never made it known to missing persons that Melissa was missing. Chris must have done it. So at this point, you get the idea, especially with us knowing that Melissa was a runaway when she was living with Norma, that she even ran away to be with him. So is this another pattern of her running away again? Maybe she ran away. It's not helping the defense at all, because you get the idea now that she probably ran away and you don't know why she ran away. But she probably wanted to start a new life, and then she just caught the wrong person one day. Is playing into that third party corporate territory, because she may not even be running away at all. She may have probably gone to see Thomas, because he did testify to last seeing Melissa at the end of 1999, December 1999, he did testify to that when he spoke to one of the detectives. So, what could have happened? Likely, maybe, someone was out for her. It just see like I cannot shake the thought of Eric out of my head. I just can't. Eric Jackson likely doing this because it seems like something he would do to like it just seems like something anyone might do if they find out that this man had killed some of their family members. And so anyway, let me move on. So they done a directed verdict in regards to around this time after his testimony. They done a directed verdict to get the malice murder out and the felony murder out, and the judge allowed the malice murder to stay. That she denied a direct verdict on that, but she took the felony murder under advisement. We will know that in the coming days. Then we heard testimony from Joseph Wolfenbarger, and he is the son of Christopher Wolfenbarger. And I felt his testimony was okay, but it didn't move the needle much. But I do think that there were some things to be taken from his testimony. So we're gonna go through it. He testified that let me try and get his picture up so you can see what it looks like. Yeah. A lot of today was making arguments, but anyway, he testified that he can't remember if Melissa's pictures were taken down in his family or not, and he also gave testimony that they were discussing how Carl had gotten away with his murders when and Chris was essentially walking into the room. Let's listen to that testimony.
And it's only so much you can tell a small child, but it was more so that it was done in a very horrific way.
Did you at some point move in with your father?
I mean, yes.
And about how old were you when that happened?
It was after high school. It was.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't recall the exact dates, but.
Do you remember?
High school should be around 14, 13. I don't know what you guys class as high school, because high school over here in the UK, that's year 7. So I'm guessing, oh my gosh, I'm not good at it. It's been a long time ago. 12. You be 12 or 13 when you go high school for the first time. So I don't know if this is first time or mid high school or whatever.
Or where you lived at the time?
Yeah, same place he was found.
Was it?
In Griffin.
In Griffin, okay. And did anyone else live with you at the time?
Yes.
And who were they?
My little brother, Alias. And it was mainly just us three.
Did your sister live with you at any point?
No, that was before.
Did she come visit you at any point?
At what time are you referring?
This is afterwards.
Like.
Okay, let me try a different line. Do you remember at some point the defendant making a comment while watching a TV show that he knew how to dispose of a body by burying it under concrete or something to that effect?
It wasn't necessarily from a TV show. It was more so we were discussing about how Carl had gotten away with other murders, and we were talking about different scenarios. And my sister had walked in later on, kind of caught half of the conversation, and kind of been standoffish about the conversation.
Okay, so a couple questions just to clarify. The context of the discussion was Carl Patton's murders?
Right.
Okay, and at some point Chrissy walked into the room and overheard the conversation?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to share screen, please.
Hey, are you in?
So that was the part that I wanted, because that testimony was bad. And this testimony, it was bad for so many reasons, because one, it gives the idea that Chris only learned of the murders. If we remember, when he was being interviewed, I'm not sure. He didn't mention it. I'm not sure if he mentioned it in 2003, in his 2003 interview. I don't think he did. I think he mentioned it in a 2021 interview where he said that the family were murderers. So I think that's when he mentioned it. But it's important here because he didn't learn this information. Like, it sounds like he just walking in, and then they were cluing that these kids were cluing him in on it. We don't know the time frame that this conversation took place, but I believe on redirect exam, that's when a time frame was established. Well, at least an idea of a time frame was given in regards to this particular memory. So let's continue, because on cross-examination, Joseph gave testimony in regards to him seeing pictures of his mom, but he says that there wasn't many pictures. He says that he was around 4 or 5 when his mom when his mom was murdered, and says that Rachel had told him about the mom being murdered. Who is Rachel? Rachel was the girl that Christopher. Rachel is the girl that Christopher was seeing at the time. So the question now becomes, and I hate the state for this. I hate the state for this, because you have a testimony right here that he has a new girlfriend. They just abandon it and just let it go. They could have just asked her, "Oh, do you know when they probably got together? Do you know when Rachel started visiting the house? Can you remember something like that? How old were you when Rachel started visiting the house? What's your day of birth?" I don't know. Just try to nail down a timeline, especially in a case this old. Try and nail down a timeline, because if he was seeing another girl immediately after she was dead, that's sus. That could help the state case that he just did it to move on and be with someone else. They're not going to argue cultural reasons, but the jury can infer back then it was more of a taboo to get divorces. They can infer that. Obviously the prosecution are not allowed to make that argument, but they can infer that. And this in my opinion was the failing of the prosecution to not try to probe more into this new relationship that Christopher suddenly had. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe again they know from pre-trial prep that this relationship was probably later on, like 2003 to 2002 or something like that. We don't know. But anyway, on redirect exam, the defense, let me play it, and this is gonna be the last clip because he's the last testimony, he's the last witness up. So this was the redirect exam, and he just gave testimony in regards to discussions that he had with Rachel after Melissa was known to be missing.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
And so you heard a bunch of details
Yes.
when you were 4.
Yes.
And you never asked your dad about what happened, correct?
I mean, it'd always been a touchy subject for, talk about with anybody, it's not really.
Okay. So you never had conversations about your mom's death with your dad, haven't you?
I mean, bits and pieces,
But nothing extensive.
Right.
And that over the years?
Right.
Okay. And after high school, you moved in with your dad,
Yes.
and you haven't had conversations
Sorry, this is still the cross redirect is coming soon.
with him about it. Only bits and pieces, correct?
Correct.
And you were still living with him. You're still living at that address?
I mean, not at the moment, But, you know, I was off and on for a while, you know, shared 2 residents.
Who was your, what, the other residence was Cathy Wolfenbarger?
Yes.
Can I just have a moment?
Sure.
You live, do you, right now, you live with Cathy?
Yes.
Okay. And who is Rachel?
That was the woman he got with after my mom.
Okay.
This is the part
So
I
you
was talking
talked
about.
about it with your dad's girl, kind of living.
Right. They were living together and they moved in across the street.
This is the part I was talking about right here. Ask when, give the dates, give the times. You need it right here. You need it. He knows that they moved in.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more moment.
Sure.
Thank you. Were you born again? Real quick. What year were you born again?
So all of that, like I said, like again, just a letdown of a cross examination where they could have probed further into when this relationship started, because again, their theory is he just offed that he's the one. Well, they don't, to be honest, they don't have a theory. They haven't presented how he could have done this. They haven't presented how he shielded, like how he could have dismembered her and hit her. They haven't given any theory. It's anyway.
96.
96.
And by they, I mean the prosecution, but this was a good cross-examination, because immediately he's asked, when was your birthday? When were you born? 1996. So Melissa was dead remains was found on 1999. So he would only be 3 years old. So the events of the girlfriend being moved in is likely way ahead, maybe through 2001, 2002. But maybe it's me. I just like things being clear.
So,
maybe it's me.
When Melissa's remains, or when you went to the ceremony, you mentioned the ceremony a while ago, and you said you had just faint memories from the ceremony. And that would have been in 2003, correct?
Yes.
And so you would have been about 6 or 7 at that point. Would you have been 6?
Yeah, give or take, yes, about 6.
So you wouldn't have heard anything about your mother's, how she went missing until after that point, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And is your memory still fuzzy from all that stuff?
Right.
Okay.
Like I can remember like bits and pieces, like kind of where we were standing or whatnot, but you know, just.
And so is it safe to say that the discussions you had with Rachel would have come after that point?
Right.
Okay. No further questions.
So, yeah.
Anything else, Mr. Wilson?
Let's just hear the
very
recross.
briefly.
Sure.
Now you have a full sister, correct?
Can you?
You have a full sister. You have a sister.
Yes.
And what's your age difference
10 months.
between you and Chrissy?
Yes. 10 months.
Okay. Nothing further.
Mr. McDurmon?
He doesn't. He doesn't. It just shows how weak their case are, because end of the day, he moved on. Like he said, he thought she moved on. Like he said, like she has run away from home before. I think that was even a theory on the defense. The defense at least gave a cohesive theory, but I believe that was their theory, that she had run away from home before, and Chris just assumed she has moved on with her life, and she had discussed about wanting to pursue another life in California or some, if memory serves, that was their opening statement. Anyway, as much as I have my I don't know what more the state can produce at this point, to try and salvage their case, because I do think their case they have not met the reasonable doubt standard yet. And let me know what you guys think. I'm gonna do a poll. So let me know what you guys think in regards to this. Do you think that they have? We will do another poll when the case goes into closing arguments so that I can gauge what you think the jury might go for based on the evidence. But anyway, while you guys are doing all of that, let's go through the timeline of events one more time. I will update this when the rebuttal witnesses, when all of those guys, when the states have rested their case or put on rebuttal witnesses. So let's go through the timeline of events. So right here, we know about the day of birth being incorrectly recorded in the dental records. Melissa was actually born on the 9th of September 1977. Norma she was locked in a room daily from ages 7 to 12. Melissa was molested by Eric Martin Jackson. We heard this from Norma Patton's testimony. Then on the 15th of August 1995, Christina was born. Then on the 16th of July 1996, Joey, who we just heard from today, he was born. 1995, Chris and Melissa were married, according to Norma Patton. I don't know now. Anyway, sometime in 1998, Melissa reports DV to the police. This was this was through testimony by Marlon Sutton. Marlon Sutton. We don't know if this was a separate DV incident from the DV incident that Dorothy Cooley had testified to, because a date was actually given for Dorothy Cooley's testimony, and Jarion Shepard also makes reference to this particular DV incident. This was on the 21st of July 1998, but we don't know exactly what date Marlon Sutton had reported or had responded to the to a DV incident. But we've gone through that. On the 21st of July 1998, there was also a potential domestic violence battery incident between Melissa and Christopher at their home. On the 22nd of July 1998, Melissa applies for a temporary protective order against Christopher. On the 29th of July 1998, temporary protective order was dismissed. Melissa gives custody of Christina and Joey to Cathy Wolfenbarger. So this was based on Norma Patton's testimony. On August 1998, Melissa leaves Christopher. This was Norma Patton testifying to this. On the 9th of September 1998, Melissa was locked up in California County Jail. On September 1998, Melissa restarts relationship with Chris. On October 1998, Christopher Wolfenbarger begins employment at Action Glass. On October 1998, Melissa was rearrested due to violating her probation. On the 9th of November 1998, Melissa was released from DeKalb County Jail. Melissa also tells the judge at this point that she was pregnant, and Norma Patton sees Melissa for the last time. That was her testimony, but also we heard from Alton Calhoun that Norma was speaking with Melissa around Thanksgiving. On the 10th of December 1998, no contact. There was no contact made with Melissa's probation officer by Melissa. So no contact with Melissa's probation officer by Melissa. Then on December 1998, Thomas Dixon, also known as Mike, sees Melissa. Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys can see a bit better. Let me see. Hold on. Okay, so Thomas Dixon, also known as Mike, sees Melissa, and this was based on his testimony that he said he told the investigators this. So on February 1999, Carl Patton goes to Waffle House to inquire of Melissa's whereabouts. On the 15th of March 1999, Melissa did not report to the court hearing on this day for a battery hearing against Christopher. On February and March 1999, Christopher says he last saw Melissa looking rough. He took her to Taco Bell and was boarding the train at Marta Station. This was based on Arthur Calhoun's testimony. Then on 29th of April 1999, the head was found at Melissa's head was found at Avon Avenue. Then on February 1999, Christopher Wolfenbarger was fired from Action Glass for vandalism on one of their vehicles. He also never returned the saw he borrowed. This was based on Ronald and Cynthia Brock's testimony. Then on June 19th, other remains, June 1999, other remains like the leg and skull, other remains was found, for example, the leg and skull was analyzed and determined to be belonging to a male. Alton Calhoun and Mary Opti provided testimony for this. Then on January 2000, Melissa is reported missing. This was based on Alton Calhoun's testimony. Then on the 12th of January 2000, Pete Ricketts speaks with Norma Patton. There was no missing person reports at this time. On the 22nd of February 2001, Pete speaks with Norma and Carl Patton to inform them that they have generated leads to find Melissa. So this was on Pete Ricketts' testimony. And on the 26th of February 2001, Pete speaks with Richard and Virginia Autry, the Christopher's grandparents, in person regarding Melissa. Then on the 12th of September 2001, Pete Ricketts interviews Christopher in connection with Melissa's disappearance. On the 30th of December 2001, Melissa's dental records were inputted into the system to aid in locating Melissa. So this was when the case began going. This was when the case became cold. And so Melissa's funeral was around this time, maybe 2002, 2003. Then the 13th of March 2003, Melissa was identified based on the dental records. On the 14th of March 2003, Melissa's skull was properly identified. This was by Dr. Mary Opti's testimony. Then on the same day, Detective Calhoun canvasses the neighborhood campus. On the 18th of March 2003, Christopher is interviewed the second time by Pete. And this is Pete Ricketts. On the same day, Norma Patton was swabbed by a medical examiner. This was based on Carol Terry's testimony. Then on the 15th of April 2003, Detective Calhoun interviews Mike Dixon in connection with the investigation. Thomas Dixon informs law enforcement of what Melissa had told him about the tumultuous relationship, about her tumultuous relationship with Chris and the marks that he had observed. And on July 2003, Calhoun processes the crime into the system. So this was, I believe, this was when it was declared as a cold case. Nobody was arrested. Nothing was essentially done. On 2010, Thomas Dixon was convicted for felony robbery and probation violation. Then the case was reinvestigated. Christina Garrick uncovers the truth about her mother through family photos. In 2014, Chris contacts Norma on Facebook. And in January 2015, Norma and Tina Patton reaches out to Leanne Lacoste. In 2021, Norma Patton and Tina May conducts podcast interviews in the bid to have the case looked at by the DA. On the 5th of May 2021, Christopher was interviewed by investigators Leighton and Jarion. This was in their home. That was the first interview. It was unofficial. On the 12th of May 2021, Christopher is interviewed again by investigators Leighton and Jarion. This was the second interview. In 2022, items from the scene sent for investigation. 5 contributors were found with 2 DNA profiles. Chris was excluded in this. We talked about that and how these 2 DNA profiles could have belonged to anyone, and they still didn't follow up. They still went after Chris, and I would never get it. I would never get it. I don't know why they didn't try to do further testing on the 2 DNA profiles. It wasn't even explained what it means if somebody was excluded. Again, prosecution. It wasn't explained that what just because there were 2 other DNA profiles does not mean that it means concretely 2 other people are out there. There was nothing to dampen the blow, because in my opinion, the testimony that was given here by I forgot to put down his name, but it was by Stein. But the testimony that was given by Richard Stein here, it was. I'm surprised why the prosecution just didn't say, when there are 2 DNA profiles, what does that mean? Or like, what are the probabilities of finding a positive ID just based on those 2 DNA profiles? It's like, he could then go into a spiel that it doesn't really mean much. It just means that they have a possibility of finding 2 DNA profiles. We just have to go and try and swab other people. Maybe that's why they didn't want to ask. But the jury now has that in their mind, that there are 2 possible people out there, which just aids the defense theory. Anyway, moving on. On February 2023, Christopher was interviewed for a 3rd time by investigators. In 2023, DNA, paint, and fiber testing was concluded. Results all negative for Chris. And in the 18th of March 2023, Christopher was interviewed a 4th time by investigators. And the 6th of August 2024, Christopher was arrested. He was found hiding in a dryer. And in all fairness, like I said, when I look at this case, and when you go through the timeline, if you want to download a copy, I've left the link in the description. You can go and get a copy. But this case frustrates me, because if you want an example of just going after one person based on just a feeling, this is it. Because after 2023, they have no reason. They actually have no objective reason to believe it was Chris, except for just the fact that there was domestic violence in their relationship. And I'm glad that Chris is not taking a stand. He chose not to testify. So I respect that choice. But of course, they can't find out if he has been abusive in other relationships. But it would seem to me that that's likely not the case. But I don't know. Ruth Ann says, I think Norma had a lot to do with Hilton prosecuting Chris. She doesn't like him and she was pushing for it. I agree. I do think that that's the case as well. But is that how prosecution should be handling their cases? Just based on people not being happy with their neighbors? Just based on people not being happy with losing custody? Is that why you should go and prosecute a case just based on an anonymous tip? I heard that they had a tip, so I don't know how valid that is, but I heard that there was a tip, so that's how this case was effectively pursued. But in totality of all that's presented, I don't even think that the defense needed to put on a defense today. But at the very least, we get that the best of the witnesses does not help the prosecution, because we eventually got to learn that Carl Patton was known to be a serial killer by the time Joey had gone to live with the parents. So the question now becomes, because we know that this was around maybe the age of 5 or 4. I think we heard today from Cathy Wolfenbarger that Joey and the other guys, they went to live with their grandma first, then they went to live with Chris Wolfenbarger. So you're getting the idea that around 2000, 2001, the news around, or 2002, whatever you make about it, the news started going around that Carl Patton was a serial killer. But the ambiguity in regards to the year that they could have learned that is actually probably the best positive for the defense, in my view, because if all of this was coming out later on and it started filtering into the media, we know that locally the news always travel on the streets first before it actually reaches the mainstream. So there's a high likelihood that, like I was theorizing from day one, there's a high likelihood that somebody may have found out about Carl being a murderer, and it could have been Eric, and he could have taken revenge on Carl and done this gruesome murder to take revenge. It's very likely. I believe that's why the prosecution on Krause were trying to establish how old Joey was when he was learning about the mother's death, or all those things, trying to pin it down to a possible time that would keep it away from the Pattons, and when that news had broke on TV, because they're trying to rely that that's when everyone knew about it. So by that time, the murder had already been committed. So that's what I'm guessing the prosecution were trying to do. But you gotta admit, this isn't the internet age. This is not the internet age. The news media were not that fast back then. The jury might consider that. So I would imagine this being a massive thing on the closing arguments to bring home that Carl Patton was new to be a serial killer back then, killing for insurance money. They're gonna hammer that home, that he has enemies, that he had all those things. I'm 100% confident that that's going to be their closing arguments. They might have had. I don't think there's a tip. Rufan says they might have had a tip, but still no new evidence. I don't think a tip even exists. I'm being completely honest. A tip does not exist. A tip does not exist in this case. I'm being honest. Yeah, like apparently the tip was to do with a neighbor overhearing a DV incident or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, that's all I wanted to go through today. Nothing really much except for just three witnesses having testified today in regards, and it was all the defense witnesses in regards to the background of the case. We're gonna know more. We are going to know more on Monday what happened. So we might get closing arguments on Monday. I don't believe so. But if there is, I'm gonna say I don't believe there is a trial tomorrow. But if there is, there is a trial tomorrow. My bad. There is a trial scheduled. I don't know if they will answer the subpoena tomorrow, because I know that the defense did ask for a continuance until Monday. But if it does happen tomorrow, we'll be live tomorrow to catch up on what happens in court. So tomorrow would be day 7. We'll be live if they do, if the witness does appear. If the witness doesn't, I'm guessing that the judge might go ahead with the continuance. Can't wait to see a verdict. I hope we won't. This is the thing. Even though even though this seems like a really unlikely case to even be found guilty on, brace yourself. It could happen. I've seen there, like, if you watch the Zachary Anderson case, Zachary Anderson is a massive example of this. Like, he got a guilty verdict, and it was so bad. I believe the only reason that he probably got a guilty verdict was because there was a talk of a touch DNA on, I believe, I can't even remember, was it the truck that apparently was being used to dispose of the body or something like that. But that case was paper thin evidence presented, like there was nothing there, and the man got a guilty verdict and is now spending life in prison. They're trying to get him out on appeals, but that's a uphill battle of his own. So don't be surprised if there's a jury member that believes, yeah, he committed DV, so he must have done it. Don't be surprised. They wouldn't have brought this case if they didn't think that they can persuade 1 or 2 people, and that's all they need. That's all they need, because when it comes to like a case of DV, especially in today's day and age, you better believe there might be some people out there that would really persuade them, that would really persuade the other jurors to probably sway their way. Anyway, okay, catch up, man. Thanks. That's what I wasn't sure about, if there was going to be court tomorrow or not. Donna Adelson is starting tomorrow. I've been following that case from day one, so I'll be watching it. Donna Adelson, oh gosh, personally, I don't know anything about that case. I actually don't know anything about that case, but I will be watching. I will be watching it as well. I'm not sure if I will do live catch-ups for it, but I will be watching that case closely as well. But anyway, I just want to end it there. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Hopefully you guys have a great evening or day wherever you're at. Make sure that you hit that like button. It really does help us out with the YouTube algorithm. Don't forget to share this with your friends, everyone that you know. Let them know that this is the #1 place for you to get your trial recaps as well as trial discussions. Thanks once again for tuning into the Catch Up Court podcast. We will see you tomorrow we will see you live tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern time. As always, I go by the name of Hines, and this has been I go by the name of Hines, your friendly neighborhood catch up man. I hope that you're all caught up. Have a great day. Bye for now. Thank you everyone for tuning in for another Catch Up Court live stream. Make sure that you smash that like button as well as hitting that subscribe button to be notified of our future live streams. We go live regularly, bringing you case updates and recaps of ongoing trials, so make sure you hurry back on the next live stream. We also have more content on the channel that you can binge on. Check out the playlist that we have showcasing all of these contents. Without further, I go by the name of Hines, your friendly neighborhood catch-up man, and I'll see you back in court.